Hello and welcome to the USMC podcast. That's Uncle Sam's marketing channel. And today I'm joined with Jeff Sabins. Jeff, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on here.
That's great. So Jeff's kind of a unique guy. I know this podcast is normally about Marines and marketing specifically, but I just wanted to take some time to highlight a great organization. And when you're a self starter and you're an entrepreneur, you do a lot of marketing in that sense. Because again, marketing is kind of a general term, and so I just thought it'd be great to have Jeff come on here, tell his story, and I thought maybe we'd have some fun. So, Jeff, what makes you tick?
Yeah, man. I was surprised that you when you reached out to me the first time. I said, "Marketing? You sure you want me on here?" But yeah, man. I agree completely. But yeah, man. Like I'm a fully learn from experience. I don't do a bunch of research up front. Like I try, see what works, and then go from there. And I've definitely had my failures, and I've had a little bit of success in some things. But I've quickly learned that marketing, like you said, it's not just a specific term, but it's everything, and it means everything.
So, I mean, I'm trying not to fall into the same trap of the same exact format going forward and that sort of thing. But, we kind of have to do a blast to the past here to figure out, where you got to where you are. What was the point? Was it in the Marine Corps? Was it after the Marine Corps that maybe made you think that this is something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school, like graduation day, crossed the stage in the car, and going to boot camp. So there was no time to think about anything. And boot camp, SOI, finish SOI, came home for Christmas like the next week after SOI, and then within 2 weeks I was headed to Fallujah. So everything from the very get-go was just super fast for me. So the first 5 years was just fight, bunch of deployments. And then once I got to take a breather, went to a new unit, I quickly realized that the long-term plan wasn't Walmart hiring a machine gunner to man the rooftops. I had to figure something out because, yeah, fighting battles is one thing, but it's not a lifetime sustainable goal in any sort of life, So I quickly started pursuing different things to help me achieve what I'm trying to go for now. And I think very early on, once I got I first wanted to be a professional writer, like long term, always wanted to be a writer. I went and got my bachelor's in intelligence studies and used that to write my first book. But then, after a while, I quickly turned from, okay, well, in order to be a good writer, you have to know good business. And that's where I learned a lot of my failures up front. Was the first book I published was, lots of friends and family went after it. But, I had no idea how to market myself or to sell this book. And that's when I, went for my master's in organizational leadership and got into business. And that's when a whole new world of what business and being an entrepreneur means, and fell in love very, very quickly. And the whole last 10 years of my career in the Marine Corps was shaped to that. Like I knew when I retired, I wanted to open a business.
So did you write that book while you were still in?
I did. So, I've always been an advocate for the enlisted versus the officer type thing, and I always was the guy that said enlisted, there's a lot more than just being the sidekick. You can do whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, be whatever you want to be. And I quickly wanted to brand that image of being a Marine 24/7 was what they preached. After you took off the uniform, went home, you're still a Marine, all that stuff. But I wanted to show there's more than just that. There's more than just being a really great Marine. And I, as a machine gunner, I wanted to learn my craft and really hone in my craft and study the Bible and learn the math and know that kind of stuff. But then it just went a step further. And I realized, like, once you got to that point and you spent all the extra time learning how to be like a really great machine gunner, there was all that time left over. Right? So that's when it's like, okay, well, what else can I do in my life? So started writing a book, helped my wife open a business, kind of realized that being a Marine 24/7 was great and all, but there's a lot more than just that. And a lot more you can achieve if you just, keep grinding.
Right. So if you could give us a quick proof of what that book is at. Is it about your experiences in combat? What, is it more of like a business type, instruction type?
Let me reach over here real quick and grab one.
I just happen to have one right here.
I happen to have a whole bunch sitting next to me. But yeah. So what I wanted to do, again, like even my business now, and I had a meeting with my media director today, my goal in everything I do is to be completely different in every aspect. I just want to be unique and different and not follow trends. So I take great, Echo and Ramadi. Great book, great story. Like, love that whole concept. But I really wanted to get away from writing about my experience in something that I wasn't done with yet. At the time, went to Fallujah and Karma, did the Battle of Ramadi, did the 22nd MEU, went to Afghanistan to Marja. But I still had more left in me, and I didn't want to just start and write a book about my story if my story wasn't done. So what I did is write a fiction novel based on experiences and using that to throw in some facts in there. But I just really wanted to do a fiction novel series of, I can do whatever I want to do and put whatever I want in this book, and I just don't care if you believe it or not, because it's fake. It's a fiction novel.
Exactly.
So I did base it off like a concept that I had always thought about, and as a young Marine and thinking about things was like, if I'm on, and I'm again a machine gunner, always been in the mobile section, always been in a turret or a vehicle commander spot, but if I was on a foot patrol and I was the last dude in that patrol and I got snatched up by the enemy. Like some movie you're going to watch. Of course, there's a dozen movies like that. What would I do to survive? And I thought about, well, I could feed them a bunch of crap and give them some false information and make them trust me, and then I infiltrate their structure, all that crazy stuff. And then I wrote a book about it. So that's exactly what this is about. It's about, a Marine infiltrating a terrorist organization and how he went through that whole concept and came out the other side towards the end with of course some unseen twists throughout, and I just wanted to have fun with it, man. Like, I didn't want to follow a structure and do things the way I was supposed to do. I just wanted to have fun, which is probably why I didn't sell a bunch of them, right? So I just went on a whim and just did my thing.
Well, I guess you needed a little bit more marketing at that point, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, when did you go in and when did you get out? So, when did you begin your journey as a Marine and when did you end it? Well, I know we never really ended, but
Yeah. So, June of 2004 is when I went in, and then I retired. Retired for family hardship, August 1st, 2021. So just over 17 years.
So you're fresh out, man.
Yeah. Yep. So May 1st, I went on terminal. Had a couple months while I was still active duty, getting paid and working some business stuff. And then August 1st, I went all in.
Well, cool. So tell me about this venture that you're on.
Yeah. So, I've always done freelance kind of writing and curriculum development and obviously use a little bit of skills and stuff that I've learned throughout the Marine Corps. I went to Somalia in 2019 as a senior enlisted advisor for a small camp in that kind of really drove, like when you're the senior, like I'm the only active duty Marine other than, a unit across the way, but I got a bunch of AR, Navy, Air Force, just National Guard, great dudes, great people, but not something I've never experienced before in my life. And having to logistically and operationally support all those different entities that I've never worked with before, it completely opened my eyes and completely reshaped everything I did in life, And so, the last year I contracted for a couple companies for, operational stuff and revenue, and helped grow production and learned a ton of stuff about business that I've realized I already knew. We already learned that type of stuff of being of leaders in a military organization, but all you're doing is changing the words and what they're called, but the same mindset, the same concept applies. Yeah. So, and the other thing was, at my retirement ceremony, I had this great kid that I worked with when I was at MAR4Com. Great Marine. He was an admin clerk for me for operations and training, and just really smart, really great kid that I truly enjoyed working around and accomplishing the mission with. Well, then when I went to Somalia, he went up and he worked for the 3-star and was directly the admin assistant and admin clerk for him. And obviously the deliverables and the stuff you have to do for that level is high caliber. It has to continue being high caliber. Well, I've always kept in a relationship with this guy, and he got out of the Marine Corps, and I went on to the next unit, and then I retired, and I invited him to my retirement ceremony. And I figured he was doing something great. He was just out there, doing great things. I mean, the level he was operating at was outstanding, and found out that he was working part-time at Lowe's, just, getting by and not really out there getting too much done out of that. And so that's when I shaped the whole company around that concept of, hey, Marines, and not just Marines, but I've worked with the Navy, the Air Force, National Guards, reservists, active duty for the last 4 years that operate at high caliber and are really great at what they do, but just have a hard time translating that to organizations that don't realize, like, hey, this person here could really enhance your company. I mean, I helped a company within 3 months go from $2 million a year to $15 million a year in revenue just by tweaking production stuff and actually following up and going through data that got overlooked. And there's people everywhere that can do that, but it's just very hard for them to explain that and using the stuff that they've done in the past to showcase that. And I've come to excel at taking stuff I've done in the Marine Corps, for instance, Lean Six Sigma, and doing projects for certain things, and something that every Marine likely does, but I was able to turn that into a document and hand it to the company and say, this is how I can make you better. This is simple, and build a company around that concept.
So you mentioned Lean Six Sigma. I think I saw that you have a certification in that.
Yeah, I did that. Did that when I was in MAR4Com. Something I didn't want to do, but they.
But probably happy that you did it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was with Avery Dennison at the office products industry, the division, sorry, we were manufacturers, but we were able to take those Lean Six Sigma tools and move them into the marketing departments. And, we would have horizon projects and all that sort of thing based around, new product offerings or, new channels of business, something that we hadn't done. So it's kind of interesting how those things that started out just to handle, or production and manufacturing and process improvement within like a plant, have been able to be, adjusted to apply to really any kind of business. And that's one of the things that, it's kind of cool when I'm talking to people about, when they're transferring out of, or transferring back to civilian life from the Marine Corps. I mean, those are great skills to hone in on and highlight when they're looking at, and even when they go, if they can go into the marketing, in the field of marketing and bring those Lean Six Sigma, they'll realize that they're applicable to to their projects there. So it's kind of cool to see that the Marine Corps put a lot of focus on that, because I've talked to a few people recently that have those certifications, and I just think it's a great skill set to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure being at a 3-star command had something to do with that, and obviously gave us probably an advantage over most units, which is unfortunate. But we were even forced to do the full-scale projects, lead projects, do the documentation, and it was great for me to have after walking out the door, and it's not just that, it's everything. I mean, curriculum development. I went to a curriculum developers course while I was at SOI. Something that we use to build the platforms for teaching the future combat instructors when I was at McKick. I was able to get out and use that, or actually I was still active duty, and I was able to use that to develop a curriculum for a television show for AA, right? Like they reach out to me through Upwork, and like there's a television show out there now with a script with my name on it, because I took a chance to say, hey, you know what, I can build you a curriculum and make it look professional. And I mean, it's just all those schools, like senior instructor course, basic instructor course, like all that stuff is it seems like rudimentary to us in the military, and it's just a check in the box. But in all reality, on the other side, it's completely feasible to use that to your advantage and say, hey, like I can get up in front of people and speak professionally and intelligently and get the point across. And when you look around and some of the companies I've worked with, like you just don't have that all the time. There's just people aren't used to getting in front of people and talking to large groups, and those are skills that are great to have,
Yeah. Do you so on your business model, it just, bear with me if I'm a little bit confused. Are you guys more of like a consultancy where you present things to? What kind of services do you offer? Are you kind of a placement agency too?
So the website's getting ready to go live today. I just talked to the marketing team and whatnot about all that to really get all the information out there. But basically, we are an operational business service. So what I've noticed working at executive levels with a few companies during my last year was finding people to do the work and do the work right the first time or quickly. It's very hard. I mean, we went through 4 different revenue managers to deliver a P&L. Like a P&L, like it's so simple. Like if you keep up with the data, you can hit a button that prints off a P&L that could be done in 10 seconds if you keep up with the data. Well, we had people that couldn't produce a P&L for 4 weeks, and you lose tons and tons of avenues and stuff like that when you can't get timely deliverables. So I quickly learned that there's certain positions that you don't need to pay a full-time employee to do 40 hours a week, that especially startups who can't afford to pay $45,000, $55,000 a year for a revenue manager, but can afford to pay a service like mine to where they pay a flat rate fee, which I guarantee will always be lower than hiring a full-time employee. And then we offer every single service that's on my website and it's on my page for that price. So it's not like I'm going to do 3 weeks of administrative and revenue services for you, and then you want someone to look over data and me say, oh, it's going to cost you no. Like I'm here to help companies, because the goal would be, if I can help a startup company for 6 months, with my team of all, so I only hire veterans on my team, so it's an all veteran operated company. If I can help that startup company after 6 months with these veteran operational services and help them grow, maybe that'll turn in them finding finding and hiring a full-time veteran to fill that role, because they've seen how great veterans can operate and what kind of work they can do. And additionally, everything I do is from a remote basis. So I knew right off the bat. So 10 years ago, actually this month, 10 years ago, my 2-year-old son, that we found a brain tumor in his skull the day of the Marine Corps ball. Had to go through 3 different brain surgeries, tons and tons of just work. Still to this day, there's tons of therapies and tons of services. So I knew when I got out of the Marine Corps, it was my turn to come home and help my family and be with my son and help my son, grow and get through the challenges that he faces every day. My wife was going through 24 hours of therapies with him a week at one point. So I knew I wanted to be able to be at home with my family and still show that this type of services and this type of work can be done at a high level and high caliber. And when I first retired on terminal, I was working with a company that I was driving 2 hours a day 2 hours to get there and 2 hours back, because I live up in the mountains. So I had to drive to a city to get a good, executive level job. I was going to work every day, spending 4 hours on the road and getting stuff done. And after about, a month, I said, hey, I have to be home with my child. And this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I wanted to do after I retired. I didn't want to retire to more work and more stress. And they said, yeah, go ahead, do everything you do, but from home. And within, 2 weeks, they said, hey, we're glad we did this. We're actually getting more work and more proficiency out of you because you're not driving 4 hours a day and you're there not worrying about stuff. So that was another model that I wanted to have in my company was, hey, these people are at home with their families. They appreciate that because they just spent between 4 and 20 years or greater not being with their families. They can be home with their family and produce high caliber work, and we show it every day.
I guess it's a positive thing that came out of the pandemic because it forced a lot of companies to embrace remote technologies. And I think it not necessarily just to as a safety precaution, but going forward, it forced companies to upgrade their systems. It forced them to spend that money that they were saying, maybe 4 years down the road, we'll need to do this. And wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And I think a lot of them are finding, the agency I've been consulting with, they gave up their brick and mortar because then now you're not looking at utilities, you're not looking at rent, all of that sort of thing. So your overhead goes down, and you can spend more time again with your family. Like I roll out of bed and go right into work, and it's a lot less stressful. You're not wasting hours of your day just sitting in a car and then stressing about getting there on time and getting back and forth. So. No, I think it's a great thing, in the fact that we're getting to a point where I think that a large majority of the work is being done electronically. I mean, obviously, if you're a mechanic or you've got a machine, you're working on those things and that sort of thing. But there's so much, I guess. Soft work, that if you want to say, versus hard work that gets done these days in the cloud, that it's very helpful.
Well, yeah, and even like take a look at current contracting companies who are general contractors and construction, and the ones that are accepting the CRM digital marketplace and digital content. They're the ones that's getting all these lead generations and turning their conversion rates are much higher, instead of just waiting on phone calls that come in through their brick and mortar shop. I mean, once they start accepting that, and it's happening all over the place. I'm seeing companies who were basing off of word of mouth and phone calls coming through in these small towns, and they've gone to a lead generation with a CRM attachment, are just tripling their revenue within weeks. I mean, it's insane how that stuff is helping everybody out. And Google My Business and all that stuff is just, it's great. Like my website's not even live, and I've received 3 leads today, and I still can't figure out how they got my number. It's crazy. Technology's out of control.
Yeah, they find ways to do that. Google is doing a lot of interesting changes within its ads platform, specifically with new extensions and that sort of thing. So, and with the Google My Business platform, I mean, that's really becoming the new website for everybody, which is kind of scary. It's like, you still spend all of that capital into building a great website. And, if you look at the traffic, 3/4 of it kind of just stops at your Google My Business page.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
you get a phone call,
Yep.
So, in some cases it's actually, and again, you're using those robust, analytics that are built into those platforms, that you don't have to really kind of interpret with, like, say, the analytics or whatever you're serving on your website. And they all kind of link together. I mean, phone, directions, phone calls, website from the clicks and that sort of thing. So it's really kind of interesting where that's going on. Now, Facebook, on the other hand, is still such a pain in the butt to deal with, and it's going to be interesting to see where this whole new corporate structure that they're going to, is how that's going to affect businesses.
Yeah, and it's crazy some of these companies I work with, and they got a great website, like really high performing, great data, great turnover, and they've never claimed their Google My Business, and they wonder why when someone searches for their service, they don't pop up, and that's just, it's just insane. I think part of the problem is the social media was so great. Facebook was giving so many leads and so many sales when people started figuring that out. But now everybody does that. You have to do everything well now. You can't just pick one thing and be great at it. You have to be great as much as possible on all platforms. It can't just be Angie's List anymore,
Right. Well, that's something else that, it's funny they say Angie's List, because it kind of ties in with what I was just about to say. There's another service that Google has that's not as well known, and even when you're looking for it, it's tough to find. You have to actually search for it unless you have it bookmarked or the web address. But the local services ads from Google is kind of an interesting thing. Now, not everybody not everybody qualifies to be portion of them, but for service companies, like, it's strange, like HVAC, right, or attorneys for all things, right. So it's actually it's an ad platform within Google that's sort of like that Angie's List, because you have to be screened. It's Google verified, Google screened. You get that special designation, and those ads actually pop up even on top of Google ads, right at the top of the page. So it's like when you have that map pack, or that the ad spots, it's right at the top. It's the Google screen, then it's ads, and then it's the map pack. So it's really interesting how they're doing it, but they're really kind of taking over all the channels there, all the touch points.
Yeah, and the moment we all accept that that's probably going to be the way for the next 6 months to 12 months, and it's going to change again, that's when we're gonna keep up with it, because it's just, once everybody keeps figuring this stuff out, it's just going to keep changing, and the algorithm's going to, look at LinkedIn. You could have, a year ago, you could have had 20 of your buddies comment on your post, and you would have been a viral post, so they had to change it, because people were figuring that stuff out.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I always joke to people that aren't Marines that we also have we have another saying in the Marine Corps. It's Semper Gumby, being always flexible. And
Yep.
so, yeah, that's one thing that I think, Marines and other service veterans have an advantage of. It's just, you never know what was coming next. So you just had to be ready to pivot and move on to whatever new mission that's come along. And the same thing comes with business and marketing. You got to be able to be, you have your ears and eyes and open. You got to be, have your head on a swivel for new trends and technologies, and be able to adapt to them, and be an early adopter of them, and then you'll be successful that way.
Yeah, I remember when my wife opened up an Etsy shop years ago. I mean, just years and years ago, when it first started becoming a thing, and I never could figure out, like, what is going on, man? Like, I'm putting in the right words, and I spent a ton of money on SEO training, like learning about SEO. And like, you ask people about that now, no one cares about SEO no more. Like, it's a great thing. Like, SEO is something you need to know and understand, but there's people that are going to tell you, like, hey, that's not the priority no more. You need to focus on this instead. And it's just always getting ready to learn the new thing and be ready to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, I think websites, honestly, I don't see them really being the source of traffic. It's really going to be social media, because we're just so in touch with everybody all the time. I think websites are destined to be kind of like the archive, or the file cabinet. It's even websites today, you have to design them with just really quick, CTAs and that sort of thing, like get their attention for like 2 seconds. And if you don't, their bounce rates are like through the roof these days. And I see that across the board for a lot of the clients that I work with. People were like, oh, I got, before it used to be like, oh, I got 35,000 visits to my page. And I'm like, yeah, well, what? Your bounce rate now is like 85%. People see one page. They don't, they don't scroll past the top 25%, and then they're gone. And, you still got people out there that want to build their website with their entire menu on one page, and, oh, I've got to have all of this for SEO. And yeah, I mean, you got to have, pertinent content to be indexed properly with your search engines. But at the same time, these days, people aren't really going to read all this stuff unless they really, unless it's a blog. Your pillar pages are really quick in and outs these days.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the concept that a lot of companies need to start focusing on, is data and CTAs, right? Like, I don't know how many people I see, like, one week they're wanting people to follow their LinkedIn profile, then the next week they want people to go to their website, and then the next week they want people to go to like, have a plan and then follow that plan, and then look at the data and see if it's working. I don't know how many times, like, when I first work with a company, I want to spend like 2 weeks going through as much data and see as much information as I can, so we can figure out what's going on. And I don't know how many times they're paying for ads. They're like, oh, they say we got to pay for ads, and the more you pay, 10% is the magic number, and this and that. But like, yeah, but you spent $10,000 in a zip code that doesn't even have any of your customer demographics, and you haven't got any sales from that in the last 2 years. I mean, doesn't matter how great your CTAs are, or how great your SEO is, or how beautiful your website is. I mean, if there's no one there to buy your stuff, stop spending money for people to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes. People don't. I don't think companies this day. Well, they didn't in the past either. They don't spend enough time developing their customer personas or their buyer personas, and even to the point where when I consult with people and I said, who's your do you have any buyer personas? Do you have any customer personas? And they're like, what is that? I'm like, well, who's your ideal customer? I mean, for your if you're a B2C or you're B2B, I mean, what, if it was a perfect world, do they live here? Do they have so much money? Whatever it is, you have all of this data coming in, and you have all of these touch points where you can gather that data and put it together, but people don't take the time to do all that work, and it's just, I think it's lost opportunity and wasted effort to have all these things in place and to do absolutely nothing with them.
Yeah, and it's a very simple process that you learn the hard way in the Marine Corps and the military that works everywhere, and it's, does the benefit outweigh the risk? It's a simple concept, right? Like, does the benefit outweigh the risk? Well, you don't know that. You can't just make that stuff up in your head. If you don't have the data to see what the benefit is and what the risk is, you can't make those decisions. And I think a lot of people, and I love coaching, I love that concept. I think it's great. I think groups of business owners and people together everyone becomes better. Like I do the Dave Ramsey coaching. I love working with those people. I love all their events. But I think sometimes, and I'm not saying that the Ramsey group does this or all coaches do this, but sometimes people hear something from a coach and they take it as gospel, and they try to go do and get the benefit without doing the work behind it, right? And you see that a lot because one coach will tell you one thing and one coach will tell you another thing, and quite frankly, what the coach's job is to get you to start thinking about stuff and then make your own informed decision. If a coach tells you, "Hey, go spend $15,000 on ads right now and you'll be rich in 2 months," and that's not a good coach, right? Like,
No.
You need to be given information and make an informed decision, and you can only do that by looking at your data, not the data of the people around you. You can compare yourself to those data, but without looking at your data and knowing, what's my sales rate, what's my closing rate, how many leads am I getting per, even looking at how much am I paying for Angie's List and what's my return? How much am I paying for Home Advisor? What's my return? How much am I paying for, all that stuff? If you're not looking at those numbers all the time and making small adjustments based off that, I just think you're setting yourself up for failure.
So, there's a lot of people out there, marketers out there that to your point, are more focused on, those, what are the competitors doing? How are you doing to your competitors? And they don't spend enough time on differentiating their brand. There are a lot of industries out there where people have the same, the same type of service. The auto industry is a great example, and I think that honestly that industry's gotten a little stale because our consumer behavior and our consumer needs and wants, we're getting so spoiled with all the new features and technology that I think they're having difficulty differentiating themselves, and they're still adopting old tactics to get our bodies into their dealerships. But there's quite a few out there that are changing the molds that they're doing. But that's one of the things I think for anybody in any industry, they should spend a lot more time, to your point, paying attention to their products, and only, when it comes to the competitors, how are they differentiating from their competitors? How are they making their products better?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great points, and even some of my guys tell me I'm crazy sometimes, but that's like one of my goals is I always want to be different in what we do and stick to our plan, right? And I don't know how many times I've had people tell me, like, you're crazy. Like, why would you offer all of your services for one price and base it off of I've made mistakes and learned from coaches. So I had a one price of all services for one price, take it or leave it, and it's a horrible idea. And I had to do tiered pricing. Well, one of the things they told me was do your tiered pricing and have some services available and have some of them not available. And I didn't want to do that. So I based it off of hours per month. For 40 hours a month of these services, this is what you pay. For 80 hours, but always offer all services plus more, because I think the main goal for me is to show that we're here to help these companies, and veterans can help these companies, and vets have the skills to enhance startup businesses and make them better. And the only way I can do that is by actually taking care of the customer, taking care of the consumer, and not trying to get every dollar I can out of them for every additional service. Right? So I can't base my tiered pricing off of other companies, because a lot of companies do it based off services. For these services, you pay this much. For these services added on, you pay this much more. And for this much, I want to make sure that every person I work with knows, like, hey, you get access to everything. This is just how much I allocate a veteran to your service per month based off the tiered system. But let's just say you use this handful of services for 4 months and you decide you need some help with this. We're not going to sit here and say, well, we need to renegotiate our contract. It's going to be, all right, let's have a conversation to figure this out. How can I help you? Like that. And that's just where I want to be different at. I want to make sure that I'm helping. And I truly like business, right? Like I enjoy seeing businesses grow. I like the world of business. I think it's a great world to be in, and there's creative people everywhere, and I love it. And I think that helps as well. Where listen, like I've been through Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. I have my Purple Heart. I have my wards. I have all that stuff. I've lived what I've needed to live and do what I need to do. So it's not about, like, I have my retirement now. I get my VA compensation. Like, it's not about money for me. It's about accomplishing certain things and getting these veterans who have a hard time finding passionate work and help them find that. And at the same time, that helps businesses succeed. And then those businesses start preaching the same thing I'm preaching about other veterans.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, I would think probably, and correct me if you're wrong, but you seem the kind of the guy that would be, hoping that the guys that work for you leave,
Yeah.
because that means that you've developed them to a point where their skill set is so sought after that they've got to, they got a great offer. You're taking care of them now, but they're going to be even taken care of even more,
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, another concept that people told me I was crazy. They're like, oh, you should evolve these veterans and get them all their skill sets, and then when a company wants them, charge them 15. Like, no, charge them 15% of the compensation and get your cut. Like, that's not the goal. I mean, obviously, I want 15 to 30 days to help replace these veterans and get someone in there to help them out. But it's not like, okay, for you to get him, he's going to sign a contract that says a non-compete and you can't have him unless you pay out. Like, that's not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is for you to leave my company, hire this dude to be your COO or gal to be your COO, and then I go get another veteran getting out, because, quite frankly, there's no lack of veterans out there. They're everywhere, so.
And I think, to your point, with more virtual work and more cloud-based opportunities, I really see that non-competition clause going by the wayside. It's, because we're all we're so connected that, I wouldn't sign one these days. I mean, honestly, I'd sign an NDA in a heartbeat, obviously. And, I have the integrity that, those are sacred, and you just don't, it's, again, it comes down to your integrity. But a non-competition clause these days is like, that's setting yourself up for early retirement without any pay. Because, what are you going to do when everybody is, is interconnected? So.
Yeah. And I had to do I had to do a lot of planning to get this figured out, and talk to a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me. And, what I don't want to do is go out there and charge $20,000 a month to do these services. And I wanted to make sure it was below the threshold of, and to be quite honest, man, like, I'm providing monthly services, and my tiers are $1,200, $2,400, and $3,200. Like, lower. Two of those are lower than minimum wage, like, of services you would pay. And in order for me to do that, I have veterans that are working with 3 to 5 companies at a time, like I used to do when I was active duty. I would work with 3, 4, 5, because that way, you can afford, and the cost of goods is now an affordable concept for these companies, because again, the goal is to make them better. So if a company wants 40 hours a month of us doing all these operational daily services, so maybe they just need someone part-time because they're a startup, paying $11.99 a month, that's like $18,000 a year. Like that's a steal for these guys. But what would hurt me, and let's put all my fears out in the open here, is like, if this guy or gal is working for 4 companies, right? Because I want to make sure the veterans are taken care of and they're making enough money to live off of. So in order for me to do that, they work for 4 or 5. So that's why at 40 hours a month times 4 or 5 companies, that's very doable for a veteran to do that. If they were to leave tomorrow and go to a company, that would leave 4 other companies blindsided. So I have to put in stipulations to help with that. And it's not restrictions. It's, okay, we need oversight where oversight needs to be. So if somebody does get a great offer, we ask them very kindly for 15, 30 days, but they can tell you no. They can say, nope, sorry, I'm going tomorrow. I have to have stipulations in place to have someone fill that gap so other companies don't suffer. And I think where some companies lack is just having that open conversation with these guys up front and say, hey, I want to take care of you. This is what could put me in a bad spot. Let's just talk about it. And 9 times out of 10, that always works out in my favor. Just to have an open conversation with these people and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Can we just talk about it and figure out a solution? And it always works out.
So, I mean, you kind of have you really have a unique business model in a sense. I mean, it's a service company and that sort of thing. But I think to your point, how you structure your cost model and that sort of thing is unique. As a B2B company, how do you get your clients? What are the main ways that you're doing this? Is it with inbound? Is it with outbound strategy? What have you been done marketing wise to get new clients?
Yeah, so with some of the companies I was consulting with during my last year of active duty, I found this great company that started off as a contractor lead generation that evolved quickly to digital marketing, and they're called it's called Lead Revenue. And Brett Sutherland and his team have completely taken this thing and have just killed it. They've done a fantastic job. And again, it's customer service, right? And so I called them up and pitched my idea to their CRO, and within minutes it was like, yep, we're all in. Like, this is something we want to support. We're all about veterans trying to get these veterans out there, and let's figure out the best way to do this. And they've taken the complete strategy and just have run with it and done fantastic. And it's always calling me and looping me in and asking me, my thoughts and what do you think about this design, and basically it's they're taking over the Google concept and they're incorporating all that into what they do. And so they do all my social media for my business pages. They do my Google My Business, and they build and manage the website, and the leads come through the Google My Business, social media, and the website. And so we just approved the launch. Was it 4:44? We just approved the launch of the website an hour and 45 minutes ago. And so in the next 3 days, it should be up and running and live. And I've worked with them with other companies before, and the leads that come in, like, leads equate to sales, but they're not automatically sales, right? Like,
right.
It takes what
Absolutely.
we do with them.
You got to nurture them.
People think like you're getting 100 leads, you're going to make 100 sales. Like, no, you'll be lucky if you get 10 of those. Like,
right.
But
I have more like 2 of them.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean,
it is a volume game when it comes to lead generation. So
absolutely. And so, and I don't want to grow super fast with that, right? Like, I don't want again, a lot of companies say sales solves all your problems, and for for certain industries that's true. For someone like me, it would crush me, right? Like I can't go from having, right now I have 5 clients to 400 in next month. Like I wouldn't be able to sustain that. I have to control it and do it smart. And again, it's the data management, looking over the data, bringing people on at the right time, and again, being upfront and completely honest with people and let them know, like, hey, would love to take you on. This is how we can help you. I need 2 weeks to onboard to really get this and do it right.
Yeah. So to that point, I mean, how do you handle the pipeline? I mean, do you have an agency, recruiting agency you work with now, or is it, through veteran networks and that sort of thing, or where do you find the talent most of the time?
Yeah, so right now, I do a lot of my talent through Vetrapreneur. That's the Stephen Kuhn and Lane, and those guys have a great organization, a great group, and I mean that's 16,000 companies and veteran companies right there that are a go-to source and help. All you gotta do is go on there and ask those guys, that group, and say, "Hey, I'm looking for so and so. Can anyone help me out?" And you have 100 responses from the military community within minutes. And so
right.
That kind of helps me out with that concept. And right now, a lot of the stuff is I do all the sales calls. I work every day with the companies and help fulfill the services as well. Again, like as a startup and trying to figure out what I want to do is figure out every operational procedure I can and work out the kinks before I start taking on a ton more clients. So I have benchmarks that I've set in mind for my team. So like a 15 company benchmark, then a 30 company benchmark, and then I never want to go above 300 clients. I think
that's a lot of clients.
Yeah, and some of these companies I've worked with have in 18 months are over 600 clients from a startup, and I see where the growing pains, and I've worked directly with companies who have grown too fast and it put them out of business.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that story, and that goes into my next question regarding that is what are you seeing on an entrepreneur level when you're talking to these startups and helping them with the service? What's the number one service that usually kicks them in the butt?
Yeah, I think it's always the marketing, the marketing service, because a lot of startup companies are afraid to spend money, and I 100% am not preaching go out there and spend 10% of all your annual revenue on advertising, by no means, because advertising without a plan is just wasted money. But I do. There's a 6 month time when me and another partner were going through and doing business acquisitions and helping buy these small companies who were failing, and people wanted to get out and help them get back on track. And every single one of them spent zero money at all on marketing and advertising. It was all word of mouth and this and that. And 10 years ago, word of mouth was great, right? Like it did wonders. Now people have the ability to Google whenever they want to, and 9 times out of 10, whatever they Google, if they have good reviews and they're at the top, that's going to get the business or the call. They're going to get the call.
Right. Yeah. There's some research that's been out there that the average searcher will read up to 4 reviews before they'll contact a business. So yeah, those Google My Business reviews, or whichever social media platform that you're on, it's really important that you that part of that follow up with your clientele is asking for those reviews. Not necessarily incentivizing them, but if you've nurtured a company and you've provided them with great service, most of the time they would be more than happy to leave that review for. And it's I think it's just highly important that every company out there is on top of the reviews. And to that point, part of the part of that strategy is replying to the reviews, and even if they're negative. I mean, sometimes replying to those negative reviews are even more important than replying to the positive ones, because if you show that you're truly interested in making a change, that's going to impact your customer, whether it's a consumer or whether it's a B2B client. That goes a long way. Like I hear, like I see your problem. I see the problem internally that you've pointed out. Well, thank you for that. We're going to make sure it gets changed. And it's not just lip service. You got to follow through, and you got to make those changes to your operations to be successful.
Yeah, and I think another key part is the actual business doing the market research and having a plan, right? Like, I'm not naive enough to think that once my website goes live, I'm going to get 100 phone calls a day because people are searching and my business is popping up. I purposely went with lead revenue because they specialize in Google, and I know that the farther up that my name is on Google, obviously the more chances I'll have for leads. But at the same time, I completely understand there's not people going out there. The CEO of the startup company down the road isn't saying daily operational freelance services into Google. Like, my clients aren't going to come from Google searches, right? I want my clients to hear about me and then go search me on Google and then read up on me. But my leads aren't going to come from Google searches. My leads are going to come from doing things like this, getting on podcasts, LinkedIn. I stay on LinkedIn, and I knew that LinkedIn was going to be my go-to. That's why in the last 4 weeks, I've doubled my LinkedIn followers by actually engaging with people and getting on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram and that type of stuff. Like, lead revenue manages that for me. I'm completely happy with that. But I know like LinkedIn's going to be my baby. Going out here and networking with people is going to be my baby. Like, that's where my stuff is going to come from. It's not going to come from people Googling operational services from home. Like, that's not going to happen.
No, and that brings to a great point, because I mean, one of my previous guests, Cassidy Johnson, we went into a long length on LinkedIn. We both drank the Kool-Aid on that platform, but that's really important to all companies out there that making social media. You've got to figure out who your client base is, who your customer base is, and you got to meet them where they are. And each one of the social media platforms has its own niche, and you're not going to be successful on every one of them. But if you're a B2B business model, you have to be on LinkedIn, because that's that's the social media network for professionals, and it's the largest. So people that don't have a good LinkedIn presence, that are B2B customers, I think they're sorely missing the mark. And to your point, I think it's probably easy for you because you're a writer, but having that great content is important as well. So, and I've seen you frequently, pop up on my feed about, hey, there's a new post from Jeff today, so I think you're doing a great job there. So, I know you talked about where you get your clients, and we were talking about LinkedIn. What kind of CRM are you using right now? Is it Salesforce, HubSpot, anything like that, or is it like an internal?
Yeah, so what I'm using right now is called FreshBooks, and it's an accounting software with a project CRM kind of included. And I think that's going to have to evolve eventually. I want to use something like a Builder Prime type CRM, which is very easy for team management, but I stay on the Google platform. We stay within that kind of place for now. And again, this is one of the conversations that we're having back and forth, is maybe I'm maybe I don't want to grow too much for a while. Maybe I'm content with managing this thing. And because here's where a lot of companies kind of don't look at both sides. I could probably, as an owner, and less personnel, and they can all make more money.
Right. And I think because of your model, when you offer all those services, you're dedicating
Absolutely.
that time to that client. So yeah, I can see where that would be a bottleneck. If you take on too many, then you just don't have the bandwidth to handle without eventually having an entire warehouse sized factory of people on the phone constantly.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
People, so.
And again, I think what needs to be the focus is we're temporary, right? Like, no one wants to hire a freelance operational service full time. You eventually want to hire somebody for that service. So you bring people like us in who help you get to that point, and then even help you find the person for that position, and then we move on and help. Because there's always going to be startups, there's always going to be companies that need help. And I think, again, maybe greedy is not the word, but like a lot of companies are focused so much on, especially the B2B, is what's my ARR and what's recurring. And I could very easily look at that mindset and say, if I get 300 clients with a $2,500 a month fee and offer this many services, and I do this many people employed per this many, I could be a $9 million company with paying all these people what they should get paid and have a 23% net profit. Like, very quickly, I can see where people say, that'd be great. I would love to have a $9 million company. But quite frankly, what I'm more interested in is not getting shot at no more and spending time with my family and having a means to survive, right? And actually doing what I like doing, which is business. And
yeah, and I think that, again, I think it's a very unique business plan that you have, because as an entrepreneur, and having helped other small businesses get off the ground, there's so many aspects of doing business that people don't think about. There's a lot of people that have plenty of money to start a business, but they have no acumen. They have no experience of whether. I think the biggest thing is comes around with finance. Handling their books. Invoicing, doing taxes. I mean, they don't understand. How much red tape there is just on the legal and financial side, that if they don't do things right, and again, it just depends on their industry as well. If you're in manufacturing, you got OSHA, you got all these other things you have to think about, and they don't necessarily think of those. So having this business model where you provide basically all of those services is a great way of easing the pain, and at the same time, to your point, getting that business owner or that business the entrepreneur up to speed about with the tools that he or she's gonna need to run that business going forward.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people focus on how do I get my revenue to go up, and people need to realize that with the revenue going up, your expenses have to go up as well. It's not just a bunch of free money that you get. Like, you have to be able to produce what you sell. No matter what business you're in, you have to produce what you sell. And if you're not operationally functional, like, you can't do that. And I think that one of the things that helped me get to this model is, while I took a job as a chief production officer and oversaw production and money, I very quickly, as one of the only veterans in the company, became the chief everything officer. And I was doing everything.
Yep.
And then I realized that and this was a startup company. And then I realized, like, every startup company is a chief everything officer, because they can't afford to hire a full-time revenue manager. They can't afford to hire a full-time legal admin. I mean, you would think, I've seen people panic over getting their first letter from a lawyer, and it's just a simple response. It's you draft a response, legal correspondence, and send it back. It's a conversation on paper, right? Like, you don't, and it's like, Yeah,
or an
it's like
email.
we need to go hire a full-time legal admin clerk now. Like, I mean, unless you plan on doing some shady stuff and you need one full-time, like someone with the bandwidth can do that, and that's my concept is I can take these veterans who are, and again, it's not every veteran, right? There's all kinds of veterans out there who won't be able to compete at this level and just won't. They're content with not doing this kind of stuff. But I'm looking for the chief everything officers that are like, okay, let me take this on. And I can do it from home. Oh, and you're going to pay me good? Okay, let's go. Like that's, and the guy
Exactly.
I told you about, right?
Yeah.
Like the guy I told you about that came to my retirement was worked with me in Mar4Com. Yeah, he's my first full-time hire. I got him out of Lowe's. He's my first employee full-time. He's my director of media. I talked to him for a long time, and he had a background in YouTube and video and content, and it's like, wow. If you just – and you're putting tools on a shelf right now. You worked for a 3-star general doing his correspondence. You worked with me for 4 years doing training, admin, and that correspondence. And, yeah, he was my first full-time hire. Got him out of there. He's working from home. We meet every day. He's my director of media. And he's going to be, in 3 days when we do our launch, he's going to be showing everything he's got to the world, and I think that's fantastic. Like, I love that. Like, why not? And the goal isn't for me to go build a $4 million headquarters that looks cool on Google Maps. Like, the goal is for me to spend time with my family, people who work with me spend time with their family, take care of companies, and for them to say on a Saturday night when they're in a panic and they say, hey, can I call Jeff? Wonder if I can call Jeff and he'll help me out. And they give me a call on a Saturday night and I say, hey, let's get this figured out. There's a solution. Let's find a solution and not panic, and let's go get it. And I want to be that go-to person to where I'm not the owner or founder of Proven Valor Professionals. Hey, can we call Jeff? I bet he can help us out. And I have companies I've worked for years ago that don't pay me a dime who still call me to this day asking for help, and I help them every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those that's one of those marketing tactics that you can use. I mean, if you're the subject matter expert and you're reliable, that's one key selling point for your company. I mean, and that goes for, and I say this in every conversation about marketing. Every member of the organization is a part of the marketing team, because how you interact with the public and, more importantly, with the customers reflects on the overall culture within the company. And there's if it's a negative interaction, that client is gonna place that stigma on the entire company. You represent the company at any point, and that's even on your spare time and your social media. So there's so much stuff going out there with political views and all that sort of thing, and if you're a professional these days, you gotta weigh those. Do I really want to engage in a conversation on Twitter? Is it really worth me potentially tarnishing the reputation that I've built spent so much time building? So yeah, I mean, that's a great testament to your work ethic and the culture within your company.
Yeah, and the other part to it as well is I just can't. I mean, I just don't settle well. I don't like to stay still. I don't like to, obviously, like I went from being wanting to be a full-time writer to wanting to fill executive leadership roles to start my own company. Like I want to be able to move around and do stuff. And so I think 15%, we'll say 15% of the reason I don't want to be a massive company either is I'm still completely intrigued with business, and I want to be able to pursue additional revenue streams like publishing. I would love to get out there and help veterans publish their own books and their own novels, and you can't do that and help them out if you're tied up leading a $10 million company every day. So
yeah.
I just think there's so much opportunity out there for helping people out and helping people do things that they don't normally can do, like publishing a book or, running their own business and running their own type of thing. And so I think that's something I don't want to close that chapter either. So I don't know. I'm content with just being a 15, 20 client company of a handful of people working hard and, going from there, seeing what happens.
Well, man, I think that we could talk all day. I think, like I said, you just have such a unique business model that there's so many different facets that you get into. And I mean, I don't even think we probably touched on half of them at this point, But yeah, I mean, I think that what you're doing right now, and like I said, is you have a great, unique business model, and I think that it's very needed again, because there's so many new businesses starting up after the pandemic and stuff. There's a lot of people that just decided to be entrepreneurs, and it's kind of it's in a way it's kind of a new, not industrial revolution, but it's a new, if you want to say, baby boom for new companies, right? So it's going to be interesting again how many are still around in a few years, and that's normally the fact. I mean, if you can survive the first year, then you're at least, that's half of it, because you're not making any money. If you can survive 3 years to 5 years, you're doing good, because again, you're not really supposed to be making any money. No one expects you to, but yeah, it's just a matter of keep going, and to your point, making sure that your team, whether it's an external team or an internal employee base, is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and let's take it to back to the veteran community. I am absolutely just how many active duty military people are opening businesses as well during the last couple of years. Like, they're not fearing transition. They've already started their transition years out, like how many wooden flag companies are out there, or, I mean, they're just, people are out there just doing great things, and another strategy is to look at that, right? Like, okay, I know I have probably a dozen friends who are still in the Marine Corps who've all opened their own flag shop, but which ones do I follow? Which ones do I really buy from and do I like? And they're all my friends. They all do good work. It's the people who are different, and the people who are out there doing the marketing and the stuff they need. That is the stuff that they're doing. Doing videos with great content, doing different. I mean, oh my gosh, those the Twisted Oak Flag Company. I love that dude. Oh,
yeah.
It's just great, man. I love it. I love these veterans. I love everyone who's starting their own business, but I love these veterans who are breaking the norm and while active duty still out there opening their own businesses and kicking ass at it.
Yeah, I never thought that I'd be opening a brewery, but we did that. We started that process about 5 years ago, and yeah, we're in the black after less than 3. So it's been interesting. But to your point, we probably could have used a company like yours starting up, with all sorts of things. I ended up being that see everything guy,
absolutely.
Chief everything officer. Yeah. But yeah, it's again, I think to your point, it does come down to the marketing of your company, whether it's word of mouth or if it's hardcore traditional advertising out there. As long as you know your market and you know that your consumers are, it makes sense to spend the money where you're spending it, then go for it. But to your point that you said a long time ago, and I'm the same way. I'm all about benchmarking and following the data. I mean, I did category management, which was fact-based selling for Avery years back, and it's all about that. It's all about that. Letting the data speak for itself. You can't just put your experience, even if you have 30, 40 years of marketing experience. you can't assume that it's a cookie cutter approach. You got to follow what the actual data tells you, which was successful and which wasn't.
Yeah,
So
I seen something the other day on that Facebook group I was telling you about, and someone asked what sets you apart from everybody else, and someone says, I have over 50 years of marketing experience, and the response to immediately from somebody else was, yeah, but it's 2021 and something that was great 50 years ago is irrelevant now, and
what have
exactly,
you done lately?
And my story brand, I will always push that, the mystorybrand.com free service. People are going to buy because of you. You can have the best product that's the best priced, that's at the top of the Google, but they're always going to buy what you give them, right? Like I made it a point, and that's the first thing that Dave Ramsey coaching crew kind of told me was like to be careful of. But I've made a point very early on, like I would never use my Purple Heart to gain business, right? Like I refuse to allow that. But there is a story and a concept of who a person is, that if you tell that story and people get to learn the real you and what makes you tick, they'll buy stuff from you every day. So that I'm huge on the My Story brand and telling your story and telling people who you are and how you tick and what makes you you, and everything I've learned is from experience and trial by fire, and even that sometimes isn't enough, but you try to do the best you can do, and people always buy you. It's not all about your product, it's about you and the story behind you and what makes you tick.
Yeah, I find it frequently that if a company always falls back on its veteran status, or the person, being a disabled veteran or whatever that is, I think that's a weak approach to business. That shows that you're struggling and that your product isn't, doesn't stand on its own. If you have to kind of pander, if you want to call it, you need to either find a new line of work or close your business, or take a look at your mission statement and see how you can tweak your operations to better focus around the product or service that you're offering to the consumer.
Yeah,
or the client.
absolutely. I'll always fall back on, what I want to happen is when one of these companies are going through a hard time, if the first thing they say is like, hey, let me give Jeff a call, I think he can help us out, I think that's the victory right there of being the approachable go-to problem solver, and every company needs one of those.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Jeff. You got a great company going on over there. I think you've got a solid plan for your marketing, and you know who you are and who your business is, and we wish you the best of luck and success with your company.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate it.
Well, this has been Uncle Sam's Marketing Channel. Join me the next time. I've got quite a few people that are lined up, some really interesting interviews coming on. Not that Jeff wasn't interesting, but we'll be having him back on here. But I appreciate you guys listening to me. You can find me on Podbean. That's where my platform is. But if you look me up at usmc.fm, that's on my website. That's Facebook. That's Twitter. That's Instagram. It's usmc.fm, and follow me anywhere that you listen. I'll be on YouTube a couple of times too, depending on video quality and that sort of thing. So check me out on there too. So if you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to me on any of those platforms, and I'd be happy to book you as well. So until next time, we'll say Semper Fidelis and have a great day.